I mean, I'm a big Joel Embiid fan, maybe because I'm a little old school and I like the fact that Embiid's on the post. But Anthony Davis obviously does more at this point, if you want to call him a big man like Embiid. Phenomenal. And what's going to start getting him the attention he deserves is winning. And now they've won, as you said, 7 straight without DeMarcus Cousins. They were playing well with Cousins. I thought he and Cousins were really teaming up well and getting used to each other. I hope that's where DeMarcus ends up as a free agent. And then I want to see what these guys do. Get some shooting, some more shooting, and guards around them. They, you know, Drew Holiday, Rondo have been good for them, but get a little more shooting. And I think they got the makings of a really tough team.
Let's not forget that 3 years ago, this guy finished 3rd in the MVP voting.
Yep.
I mean, he turns 25 in 2 weeks. He's still just 24 years old. Is he the best big man in the league? To me, absolutely. I think there is a pretty clear-cut top 4 players in the league: LeBron, KD, and then Steph, Harden, Steph, depending on who you like. Those are your top 4. And then he is making a case that he is the 5th best player in this league. He's going to be first-team All-NBA if you consider him at the center position. He is, to me, people might like Embiid's long-term growth potential more than his, but, I mean, his is pretty damn good as well. But right now, he's absolutely the best big man in the league. And New Orleans is 34-26. They could get the 3 seed.
Like, yeah, the West is that tight.
Right now, Minnesota's the 3 seed. They're 38-26, so they have the same number of losses. He's doing this, and his whole career, it's been a shame. He hasn't had great point guard play, a good backcourt play. Drew Holiday's fine,
but he's been injured.
He's been injured throughout.
Yep.
And speaking of injury, injury's been overstated for Anthony Davis. He's been injured repeatedly, but not significantly.
Yep. And the last 2 years, he's been better, this year and last year.
And even prior to that, he was still playing over 60 games a year. So, no, I'm a big buyer on Anthony Davis. People have talked about all of the early in the year, oh, the Celtics, they're building up trade package for Anthony Davis. They don't want to make these moves because they're... Why would New Orleans ever trade Anthony Davis? To get a draft pick to hope that maybe one day you luck into Anthony Davis? This guy's going to be a Hall of Famer. He's another first-team All-NBA, to his credit, probably this year. I mean, New Orleans will hold on to him to the last possible moment.
If they get, as you mentioned, a 3rd seed or even the 4th seed, he's going to rise up in the MVP race. Now, it's going to be James Harden. We talked about that yesterday. But he could finish second.
He could finish second.
He could finish second. If they get a 3rd seed in the West, he will finish second. I'll say it that way.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think right now he's locking himself into a top 3 finish in the MVP.
What do you get for second place in the MVP voting?
It actually, you don't get anything, but I think it does help you. Hold on, real quick. It helps you win one down the road. I think one of the reasons people are saying Harden has to win this year is because he has 2 second places.
I don't think so. He's so far and away been the best player.
I agree with you on that. I think if you come close and not won it, it does like the Oscars. Like it helps you. Al Pacino.
You know, historically that
Susan
has been the
Lucci
case.
would disagree with you very much.
Karl Malone, Barkley were kind of giving,
absolutely.
A bit of
All right, I said Susan Lucci. The latest chapter in the Kawhi Leonard. The fact that you know that is even more impressive to me.
The Oscars.
The latest in the Kawhi Leonard saga called Will He or Won't He Return this season is playing out like he might. Quick history. Last week, Greg Popovich said it was unlikely that Kawhi was going to be back. Despite being medically cleared by the Spurs training staff, he wanted a second opinion, came to New York to get it, and is now back in San Antonio, where reports are he will come back, and he's targeting March as a possible return date. Chris, what does all this say to you about the relationship between Kawhi Leonard and the Spurs at this point?
It says to me that it's repairable. And that is what you want if you're the San Antonio Spurs. There's been tension. There's no question. Kawhi Leonard feels like there was a little bit of misdiagnosis with his injury. And he also feels like the Spurs were pushing him to come back before he was ready. And his feeling is that I came back, you saw what happened. I had to stop playing after 9 games.
And that's so weird for the Spurs.
Well, here's the way that it's been described to me.
Please.
Kawhi, how you feeling today? I'm all right. You know, you ready? You think you can get out? Nah, I'm not quite ready. Well, why don't you give it a try? Just subtle. Why don't you give it a try and see how it feels? Continuous subtle things like that where he felt like they keep saying this. let me get out there and play. But the Spurs, they had reason for it because obviously their doctors have cleared him.
He was
now
medically
outside
cleared by the
doctors have
Spurs.
cleared him.
Yes.
And they'll tell you that Kawhi, before this injury, just throughout his history, he's been the type of guy, they haven't said it as he's soft. Obviously he's not soft, but he has always wanted to be absolutely, positively 100% before he gets out on the court.
And they've been very cautious with him prior to this. Like, take this
And part
year
of
out
that's
it.
his
How
his
makeup.
mentality.
We talk about Anthony Davis being injury prone. Kawhi Leonard, prior to this extended absence, has actually missed more games per season than Anthony Davis. And that's from some dings, but also because the Spurs have always, even as a young player, put him on a maintenance plan. They've been very careful with him. But to answer the question, what does this tell me about their relationship? I mean, it tells me that Greg Popovich's mental ploy, if I want to call it that, worked. I mean, Greg Popovich, when he said publicly, listen, I've got a date. I'm not telling you what the date is, but there's a date in mind that if Kawhi comes to me after that date and says, I'm ready to go, I'm not playing him. I think most teams would not do that. Like Jimmy Butler with the Timberwolves, he just had the meniscus surgery. He could come to them game 3 of the first round. And once he's cleared and say, I'm good to go, and they will play him in game 3. It felt to me like Kawhi's Pop was concerned that Kawhi's plan may have been, with a week or 2 left in the regular season, because he's been cleared by the doctors, that's when I'll clear myself. And Pop went out and said to everyone, that's not going to happen. And now we're hearing Kawhi say, okay, give me a couple weeks and I will be back. And so that's, to me, it's significant. And it makes Popovich's comments last week make the more sense.
Well, and look, I thought Pop's comments were right on point. I mean, if I'm a team, I have to get my team mentally ready for the playoffs. And I think you make a great point. That may be true. But he also may have been like, look, we can't sit here and wait for Kawhi to come back. All these other players, Forbes and the guys who are going to fill in for him, they have to feel like, okay, I'm going to be playing in the playoffs. That's how they're going to be at their toughest. And that's one reason Pop's always been able to just fill in with the next man. Now, is it possible that Kawhi and his camp said, okay, they're playing hardball. And here's the thing. Beyond coming back this season, they could have said, maybe the Spurs are getting so upset that they don't offer me, because this summer they can offer him the Supermax, 5 years, 217, some 219 million over 5 years. They're the only team that he can get that from. That's when this is really going to come to a head. Not when Kawhi returns on the court, not in the playoffs. This summer, if the Spurs offer him that and he turns it down, he will be traded. Or if they don't offer him that, that says a ton as well.
One important note on that I just found this out. I didn't realize it. It was the one, I think it was Larry Kuhn pointed this out about the CBA, but I'm not certain exactly who it was. That Supermax you have to qualify for. You can qualify for it by first-team All-NBA or winning the MVP. There's a few things. If he doesn't get it offered to him this year, he has to re-qualify. So that Supermax, if he doesn't get offered to him this summer, he might not be eligible for it. Like, it's not like once you qualify for it, you're always eligible for it. So he's obviously not going to get any awards, anything this year. So then he would be in a position where next year he has to be first-team All-NBA, which, by the way, LeBron exists, Kevin Durant exists, Giannis exists. That's a tough spot to get it. That could cost him $50 million for a guy who, by the way, doesn't have money gets $2 million a year from his shoe deal.
So, guys, let's go ahead and assume that he does come back in March. He does make an impact on this Spurs team. Do they all of a sudden become legitimate contenders in the West? They are contenders. They always are, I think, as long as Greg Popovich is on the team. But what does it do to them? Where does it elevate them in the West?
Look, well, you said it, in the West. I believe this wholeheartedly. With Kawhi Leonard, and darn near without him, but with him, they could beat any team in the league in a 7-game series. Not definitely would.
Any team in the East.
But period, except for Golden State. They could beat Houston. I mean, they did it last year in 6 games.
With Kawhi, you're saying?
With Kawhi. With Kawhi Leonard, they are as good as anybody in the league except Golden State. I don't think they have the athleticism to guard Golden State over the course of a 7-game series on the perimeter. Now, they can go big, which most teams can't. But at this stage of his career, I don't think Pau Gasol can punish you consistently enough like he used to be able to really outweigh the three-point shot that Golden State has. And Aldridge will have some big games, but over the course of 7 games, will he punish Golden State enough to outweigh the three-point shooting? I don't think so.
I think with a healthy Kawhi Leonard, the Spurs could. They would be, to me, a clear 4th most likely, but they could win the championship. I don't.
Oh, okay.
I would have right now. I would have it Golden State, Houston, Cleveland, Spurs with Kawhi Leonard. I would have them 4th. But even without winning the championship, they could have an enormous impact on who wins the championship.
Yes.
Based on between Houston and Golden State, who gets the Spurs in round 2. That is the difference between having to face the Spurs in round 2 and what I think would be a slugfest with either one of those teams when you then have the other team waiting for you in the conference finals is enormous. We saw, again, the year the Warriors didn't win the championship. Part of that was because of the series they played before they played the Cavs. The Thunder took them 7, took everything, it took a lot out of them to come back from 3-1 down. By games 6 and 7 of that series, they seemed physically spent. I think this is enough of a concern to where it'll be very interesting if the Spurs are the 4 seed going into the final few days of the season, if Houston or Golden State would prefer the 1 or the 2 in order to avoid San Antonio in the second round. I think the Spurs with Kawhi are very dangerous.
If you meet OKC in the second round, too, I think they prefer OKC over San Antonio, but that'll be a tough one, too.
6 weeks left till the playoffs, just about.
A little bit, yeah.
I hope he's back because the West is going to be incredible.
Bananas.
It'll be fun.
You're talking about 4 elite teams, and then throw in Minnesota with our man Jimmy Butler.
Hey, coming up, let's talk